You're watching Bread and Roses, a weekly political social magazine that's broadcast in English and Persian via New Channel TV. Hello everyone, I'm Maryam Namazie. Hope you're doing well. I'm really sorry to say that my fantastic co-host Fariborz Puya will no longer be doing the programs with me. I'm going to miss him a great deal, as I'm sure you will, but hopefully we'll have him back to do interviews and whatnot. In this week's program, I'll be speaking to this wonderful woman, Yasmine, from Confessions of an Ex-Muslim. You have got to hear what she has to say. It's something that you don't want to miss. I'll also be talking about the boycott of the Women's Chess Championship in Iran. An imam, an Iranian-backed and based imam, who gleefully explains how to kill homosexual men. I'll be speaking about Deeyah Khan's new film and the question of non-believers of Islam, as well as the fact that they shouldn't feel alone. The insane fatwa of the week is from an imam explaining why we must have polygamy and temporary marriages. You need to hear these reasons. And of course, the slice of life is from this fantastic film called No Land's Song. It's about women's resistance and singing in Iran. You don't want to miss this program. Stay with us. In the week that passed, the news of a boycott of the Women's Chess Championship in Iran has gained momentum. We've heard that the US champion, Namazie, has said that she will be boycotting the championship games in Iran next year because she does not want to don the Islamic hijab. Now, I completely support her in that action. I think it is important for women to stand up against compulsory veiling rules. Now, what's interesting is there have been, of course, she's received a lot of support, but there have been others who have said that she should respect Iran's culture. Now, the fact of the matter is, how can it be Iran's culture if it's compulsory? If you're met with imprisonment for up to 2 months if you refuse to wear the veil, if you've got acid thrown in your face because you're not complying with the veiling rules, if you're blamed for every calamity under the sun, from the drying up of rivers to earthquakes if you're improperly veiled. It includes fines, morality police on the streets of Iran, constantly harassing women and telling them to cover up properly. So obviously it's not a respect for culture to say that you refuse to don the compulsory hijab. Why shouldn't she be able to show her agency and say that she doesn't want to wear the hijab? How come when the issue of choice and rights are raised, it's always in favor of veiling, but never in favor of those who want to be unveiled and who want to resist veiling? So I think something we need to defend. We need to defend a boycott. She's not saying that she doesn't support the women chess players in Iran. Of course she does. The fact of the matter is that she's saying that women have to go to these matches in Iran and be compulsory veiled. We shouldn't be supporting it. Now, the fact of the matter is, recently Iran has imprisoned Golrokh Ebrahimi for 6 years because they found an unpublished story in her house against stoning. It's a story about stoning. Now, her husband, a young student activist, Hamza Sodagar, he's already in prison for serving a 19-year sentence for his activism. So should sports men and women going to Iran for championships respect these sort of ridiculous, absurd, heinous sentences against people for merely opposing the stoning sentence? The stoning, for example, is that Iran's culture then? Because on the law books it has the possibility to stone people to death for adultery, for sex outside of marriage. So in a sense, they should be saying then that Ebrahimi should be in prison for 6 years because she's condemned something that is a cultural practice. Obviously, that's absurd. Obviously, no one would put any pressure on any sportsman or woman who says that they'll refuse to go to a country where there is gender apartheid, where there is death by stoning. However, when it comes to the veil, it's always framed within a context of rights and choice if women want to veil. And if you say you don't want to veil, then it's framed within then you're accused of Islamophobia and colonialism and imperialism and all that sorts of rubbish. No way. I'm with the women who want to boycott it, not because they want to boycott women in Iran, but because they want to boycott compulsory veiling rules. Good on you. We need more women supporting women in Iran. Now, I know there are some saying that it doesn't help women in Iran. Well, who are you to say? There are some women in Iran that defend the boycott and some that don't. This is not about identity politics, but about politics. Do we stand against compulsory veiling or for veiling? Do we stand against the Iranian regime's compulsory veiling rules or for women's right to choose? If you're for women's right to choose, well then please let women chess players who don't want to wear the veil also choose not to wear it. Now, going on from that, we have, of course, we've heard of a imam who's a US born imam actually. His name is Hamza Sodagar. He's a great supporter of the Iranian regime and Khamenei, Ayatollah Khomeini, and he basically has come this past week to Britain to give lectures. That's what they call them here, basically in the West, lectures on Islamic rules and laws for Ahl al-Bayt, which is an Iranian regime center. And there's video of him a few years back where he's talking about the execution of gay men, and he's saying it with such a smile on his face. Just watch this video and we'll come back to discuss it.
If there's homosexual men, the punishment is one of 5 things. One, the easiest one may be, chop their head off. That's the easiest. Second, burn them to death. Third, throw them off a cliff. Fourth, tear down a wall on them so they die under that. Fifth, a combination of the above. We have a hadith on that. Now, whether somebody is going to accept that, that's up to the jurists to read and understand. There's definitely some of those apply. Now, maybe the combination, but this is something that's there.
As you can see, he's talking about the execution of gay men with such a smile on his face, as if it's something to laugh about. And clearly now those in his defense have been saying that he has been having a theoretical discussion, which is what they all say. You know, they smile about killing people, they laugh when apostates and gay men are killed, and they say it's a theoretical discussion on Islam, where in fact, the whole point of Hamza Sodagar's lectures, many of them, is to promote practical Islam and to promote it within the context of Khamenei's fatwas. He's done lectures on that. And of course, if we live in the world and not under a rock, as his proponents do, we know very clearly that in Iran, under Khamenei, under an Islamic regime, under Sharia law, gay men are punished with the death penalty. So this is not a theoretical discussion, but a matter of life and death. And finally, speaking about a matter of life and death, another important issue that many free thinkers face is the punishment for apostasy, which is the death penalty in 13 countries. As a result, there is a huge movement against these apostasy rules for the right to think freely and leave religion without repercussions. A large part of that is the ex-Muslim movement. It's a huge force of resistance. And Deeyah Khan, the award-winning filmmaker, has just done a film called Islam's Non-Believers. It's an important film. It will be shown tomorrow in Britain and hopefully will be available soon after on YouTube. If you get a chance to see that film, you don't want to miss it. Stay with us and we'll be back to take you next to Yasmine's interview, Confessions of an Ex-Muslim. You don't want to miss her interview. Stay with us. I interviewed Yasmine of Confessions of an Ex-Muslim when I went to the Center for Inquiry's Women in Secularism conference. She was there. It was fantastic to meet her. You have got to hear what she's got to say, and you've got to go and read her book and read her blog. It's just on one hand, a really heartbreaking story about what she had to go through and what so many people have to go through like her, who want to think differently, who want to think freely. But also it is the story of courage and human perseverance and resistance against all odds. Don't go away, stay with us. Yasmine, it is wonderful to have you on our program. I wanted to speak about your amazing blog, Confessions of an Ex-Muslim, and your book. Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. It was it nearly killed me to write that story. It took a lot of bringing up all of these, breaking open all these old wounds that I'd left to heal, I thought, and buried. So I'm actually really, I rarely say this, but I'm actually really, really proud that I got through it, because there were so many points when I was like, I can't do this anymore, I have to stop. But I pushed through. It was a lot of work, but I'm very cathartic. I'm very, very happy that I got it all out and I got through it.
Do you think it's important to get it out? Why did you think you needed to do it?
Well, for me, it was mostly because I kept on hearing all of these voices speaking for Muslim women, and the voices were either the Western sort of patronizing, condescending voice, where all Muslims, they're misunderstood, they're all good people. Or you have the other side of what was very common too, is you had these Muslim feminist voices coming out and saying, like, I'm empowered by the hijab, and I Prophet Muhammad was the first feminist, and all these kinds of things, and so all of these voices I was hearing that were the dominant voices, I felt like, no, like all of you are wrong. You know what I mean? So I wanted to bring my voice into the ring. I wanted to throw my story into the conversation. And a common thing that I would hear all the time was, well, those are the women over there, and that's their culture, and they like it, and they want to be like that, and that's the way they are. And that would make me really angry, because I would always respond with, like, do you think that they're like these weird, subservient animals from a different planet? Like, they're women just like you or me. Like, if you were forced to wear a hijab, or if you weren't allowed to ride a bike or go to work without your husband's permission, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you were a woman living under Sharia law, how would you feel? And that's exactly how these women feel. So there was like this separation of them and us. So I felt like, you know what, which one am I? Am I a them, or am I an us? So I want to let you know that in Canada, growing up, it was not Sharia law, because I was living in Canada, obviously it's a secular government, but in my house was Sharia law, and I grew up in that, under that oppression, and I fought against it. I was unhappy, I was depressed, so I wanted to let them know that we're not different. Women in the Muslim world are the same as women in the rest of the world. We all have the same wants and needs and desires, and I think that's why I wrote the book, so that they could see it's not just over there, over here it happens too, and this is how I feel about it. So this assumption you're making about how those women feel about it, it's wrong.
And what happened to you? What's your story? You said you told your story.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I grew up in a very, very conservative Muslim household. I didn't have the I went to a Muslim school. I went to an Islamic school. Actually, the school was funded by Saudi Arabia, and initially it was like a little mosque with an Indian imam, and then it was, you know, we had this guy come from, he was Egyptian, and his wife was wearing niqab, and they changed all the signs from Namazie to Salat, and it was all very like, once that money came in. But then, you know, they built the school for them and everything, so everybody towed the line, you know, brought in the books, and they started doing with the Wahhabi teaching, and that's what the environment I was raised in. And my mother was the head of the Islamic Studies department, so there was a lot of pressure on me as her daughter to be, you know, modest and, you know, all of those things, right? Don't step out of line, be quiet, you're going to embarrass me. The family's honor is all on their daughters. And then once I finished high school, my mother was having too much trouble with me. Like I wouldn't be quiet. I kept on trying to stand up, and she'd knock me down, and I tried to stand up, and she'd knock me down. And finally, at 18 years old, she said, okay, we're going to go to Egypt as a family vacation. And so we went there, and then I woke up in the morning a couple of months later after we'd been there for a while, and my whole family was gone. She had just left me in Egypt because she didn't want to deal with me anymore. And I was there for about 2 years on my own, and made it back to Canada again. But I told her I only wanted to come to Canada for a visit. I didn't tell her that I didn't want to go back to Egypt. But then once I got to Canada, I was like, yeah, I'm not going back. So then, of course, it was a very continued back with this relationship between me and her, which was always very fraught with unhappiness and discomfort and anger and everything else. So she forced me into a marriage, again, just to get me out of the house, I think, with an Egyptian man, because she felt like the Egyptians were the best people in the world. This identity politics idea of Muslims are this and Egyptians are that was something that always bothered me. But I think you'll read my story, but well, I hope you will anyway. But I was at the point where I wanted peace, you know. I was like, look, I'll do what you want. I will marry him if it makes you happy, if it'll make you proud of me, if it'll make you love me, if it'll make this fighting stop. I'll just do it. I've done enough of this, you know, like I just want you to be proud of me. So I did everything she wanted. I married him, and I wore the niqab, and I, you know, he beat me, and I would go back to her, and I would say, he beat me, and she'd say, you have to go back, because if you leave him, people are going to think you were a virgin, and so that's why he got rid of you. And a while into the relationship, I'd only been with him just under 3 years. CSIS contacted me, so they're the Canadian FBI, and I found out that he was actually a member of Al-Qaeda. So he came to Canada because it was an easy route into the United States, and this is pre 9/11. He was there for 9/11. That was his purpose. And there's all these red flags, you know, like he was of Egyptian descent, but he had a fake Saudi Arabian passport, and he arrived in Canada from Afghanistan. So there was just so many red flags, but we were an innocent country back then. So it explained a lot of things about how vicious my life was with him. But I did have a daughter with him, so that was the catalyst. That's what changed everything for me. I held my little daughter in my arms, and I looked at her, and I loved her so much, and I was willing to protect her with any way that I could. And I didn't want her to live the life that I had lived. I needed to keep her shielded from that. And then he came over my shoulder and he said, when are we going to get her fixed? And I said, what do you mean fixed? What does that mean? And my mother said, oh, no, don't worry about that. We'll talk about that later, when she's older. And then I realized what they were talking about, and I was like, oh, I have to get my daughter out of here. Like,
so your daughter basically saved you?
My daughter saved me. That's exactly it. And I tell her that all the time, because if I didn't have her, I wouldn't have had the strength to, I mean, I had a high school education and a little baby, and I walked away. And I never would have had the strength. I tried to walk away so many times before, but I was unable to. But knowing that I was responsible for this little life, and knowing that I would do anything in the world to protect her from the life that I had lived, she gave me that strength. And that's how I was able to push through and persevere. And it was scary times. It was very difficult, you know, but I managed, you know, I did eventually go to university. My mother didn't want me to go to university. Now I have 3 university degrees, you know, and I drive a car, and I have a home, and I did, you know what I mean? I'm finally the person who I was on the inside, that was fighting to break free all these years and was constantly suppressed. Oh, that's the shaitan whispering these things in your ear, you know, you have to stop. You have to, critical thought is what I had to stop, right? Like, why are you asking questions, you know? That woman finally is who you're looking at now, you know? So it was all worth it. It was all worth it.
And what a brilliant, wonderful woman, honestly. It's such a pleasure to meet you, to interview you.
Thank you.
As a final, I suppose, thing is, what's your message to people who are in situations that you are in?
My message, and I'm grateful now that I've started to write this blog, and I have a Twitter account, and people have been contacting me from all over, from India, from Saudi Arabia, from Pakistan, from Egypt, and sometimes in America and in Europe. And they say to me, like, I relate so much to your story, and I've lived this childhood is very similar to my childhood, and I never thought that I would ever be able to get out. I didn't think that that was a possibility. There were too many, the cards were stacked up against me. And in some cases, like women in Saudi Arabia, the cards are really stacked up against them. So I try as much as I can to offer that hope, that no matter how bad things are, just keep pushing and don't give up hope. Because once you give up, I was this close to giving up hope. After my daughter, I found out I was pregnant again, and at that moment I said, well, that's it then. This is my life. I will stop resisting and just allow myself to drown. And then it turned out to be a miscarriage, and I felt like that baby was like this gift to me, saying, get out. Because I had that feeling of like, I was almost drowned, like I'd almost given up completely. And then I thought, okay, well, with one baby I can do this. And then I pushed, and I got myself out. So I want these women to know that as sad as it may look, and as terrible as you might feel right now, don't give up hope. And there are so many people willing to support you now. You know, and when I did this, it was before the internet, and it was before all, you know, Facebook and Twitter, and we weren't on social media, we weren't connecting. But now, to just be able to speak to somebody who understands what you're saying, you know, these things used to be in my head, and I used to feel like I was bad for thinking them. So to just be able to express to somebody and have somebody say, yes, I understand what you mean, oh, it's invaluable. So I think that, yeah, it's a message of hope, I hope, to just say, like, you can do it. You can do it. Just believe in yourself and keep going.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Maryam. I really appreciate it. I'm honored. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the interview with Yasmine. I think she really is so inspirational, and her message is so important. You know, keep at it, don't stop, live the way you want to live, And the fact of the matter is that you are not alone. You are not alone. And this is, I think, the story both of what Yasmine has to say, Deeyah Khan's film on the Islam's non-believers that's coming out soon, the fact that there are millions of us. It is a tsunami of atheism in countries under Islamic rule and in so-called Muslim communities, and it's, you know, it's a fight that's coming. It's a tsunami that's coming. Stay with us.
ببخشید این یه قبح اجتماعی داره که مثلا بعضی چیزا چیه این
از زمان پهلوی اینطور شد. رضا شاه لعنت الله علیه وقتی آمد جلوی ازدواج موقت رو گرفت و جلوی تعدد ازدواج هم گرفت. والا تو عربا مخصوصا تو سعودی دیده شده اونجا یه مرد 4 تا زن تو ماشین همه با هم نشستن، همه با هم رفیقن. مرد چقدر راحته وقتی یه زن مریض میشه مرد به کاراش لطمه نمیخوره، اون زنای دیگه میبرن دکتر.
Now, what did you think about that insane fatwa? I mean, come on. The reasons why you need polygamous and temporary marriages. I don't know if you know, but in Iran you can actually have temporary marriages where you can sign a contract for a couple of hours to days or months, and it's a form of legal Islamic prostitution, basically, you know, and it's always, of course, to the benefit of men. And it's clear, he explains it so clearly. Look, your wife is sick, well, you don't even have to go take her chicken soup. Why even bother asking how she's doing? You've got 3 other permanent wives and possibly a few more temporary ones to take care of her, so you don't have to be bothered with that sort of stuff, you know. And that's why it just always makes me laugh when polygamy is promoted in the West as another form of marriage, like gay marriage. No, it's not. It's not like gay marriage. It's like child marriage and forced marriage. You see, they've both got marriage in the name, but they're slightly different, actually opposites. The slice of life this week is about a film called No Land Song, and it's about a woman singer who goes to Iran and tries to set up a concert of women singers, and her brother, who's a filmmaker, is filming this. It's a wonderful film. I want to show you a trailer of it, and I'd like to end the program with that. It's just talks about how absurd Islamic rules are. It's not people's culture, it's compulsory, it is the rules. Women cannot sing in public, but it just shows how, in how many ways women resist and try to challenge these rules, as has been done in this film, as women are doing by cycling, as women are doing by refusing to comply with compulsory veiling laws, and on and on and on. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's program, and I'll see you again at the same time and same place next week. Until then, goodbye.
انسان نشسته مؤدب در شنیدن تمایل جنسی پیدا نکنید.
و شاید خیلی از خانم‌ها تپش قلب بگیرن و اون اشکالی نداره. Is it good?
Yes, you're beautiful.
And thank you.
پس فکرشو بکن نمیتونی بخونی.
نظرتون در مورد خوندن خواننده زن چی؟
ولی ما توقعمون باید یه جوری باشه که برآورده بشه.
Do you like to have concerts in Iran?
I would like it if it's possible.
خودش انقلابی ترین کاریه که توی این دوره توی ایران میشه انجام داد.
You want to be a kind of provocative?
Yes.
Voilà.
عبارت میشه از یک کنسرت خانم‌ها هیچ مجوز قانونی نداره.
ریسکه، ولی ما که داریم با برگ بازنده بازی میکنیم.
اصلا سال دیگه میخواد این کارو بکنه. اون کش من غمگینش.
Hi, I'm Maryam Namazie.
And I'm Fatwa.
We're hosting a program called Bread and Roses. It's a weekly program that's broadcast in Persian and English in the Middle East and North Africa, primarily Iran as well. And it's also shown on YouTube internationally.
And we've been doing this since last May. We're coming up to our year's anniversary, and we've had quite a lot of fun making these videos.
We discuss taboo-breaking, free-thinking ideas. The Islamic regime of Iran has called us immoral and corrupt.
And that's why you need to support us. We are the alternative voice in Middle East and North Africa.
Of corruption and immorality. So do support us. Here's a short video from Patreon that explains how you can help us with even just $1 a week. That's nothing. Support us.
Patreon lets fans become patrons of their favorite artists and content creators. It's different than Kickstarter because it's not about one big project that requires lots of funding. It's more for bloggers or YouTubers or webcomics, anyone who creates on a regular basis. Here's how it works. When you become a patron, you're agreeing to give an artist a tip of an amount you set every time they release a piece of content, whether it's a new song, a video, or a recipe. You can set a monthly maximum to make sure that you're always within your budget. Choose an amount, enter your payment information, and you're done. Becoming a patron allows you to view and post in the artist's stream, and in exchange for your support, artists offer additional patron packages, which might include monthly Google Hangouts, music production tutorials, pre-sale concert tickets, or anything they can offer as a way to say thanks. Patreon, empowering a new generation of content creators.